Okay, so calling to order the TCHOC meeting of January 16th, 2024. So we start the agenda with public comment. Katie, I don't know if anybody is waiting for public comment.
Yep, if anyone has a comment, if you could raise your hand, and I do see Ross Donald, so I will bring Ross over for 3 minutes. I'm bringing Ross over, and then after that, we will have Joe Barnes.
And start video, see how that looks. Right, well, sort of. All right. Well, this won't take but a minute. Thank you very much. This is a great opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it. But the meeting kind of snuck up on me, and I really did want to reply to the two persons who responded to my comments last time. That'll be coming. It'll largely have to do with my requests for information, which I've been doing regularly. And most recently, I've been a little bit more specific about it because the Housing Authority and the Executive Director has offered technical assistance for the residents to help in our restarting of the tenants union chapter, which is viewed in the legislation as being a positive thing, where we can be in a position to support and lend aid, provide information to help coordinate and communicate things amongst the residents and staff and so on. So we hope to have some positive results from that. And the only other thing I wanted to say was, well, the important thing was to get the video recordings. Not everybody can come to a meeting. Tonight, there are 3 meetings: Commission on Disabilities, Planning, and this meeting. Thursday, there are 3 meetings: Housing Authority and 2 others. What I really want to do is play at the open mic night at the Center at the Heights. So I'm in a quandary. At any rate, when there are recordings available, people don't necessarily have to attend the meetings, but they can follow up on them. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ross.
We have one other. Let me just move Ross back. And I'm going to bring Joe Barnes in. All right, Joe, it said you declined to be promoted. So I will try one more time, but if you decline, I will assume you don't have a comment. All right, Joe, you're with us if you can unmute.
I don't have anything that I want to ask or comment on other than I appreciate the committee and its advisory role that it'll provide a great deal of help for CPC as we move forward with the Housing Authority project. So I'm interested to listen to what is being said tonight, and we'll try to bring back to the committee some sage comments that will be made tonight by the committee. So I appreciate all you people do. You're giving of your time and adding a great deal to the knowledge base that we really need. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Joe.
And I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, well, we can move on to the approval of the minutes of our last meeting on November 29th. Does anybody have any comments or corrections to the minutes?
No.
No. In that case, can I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Please say, how do we do this on Zoom? Do we have to do a roll call or just raise hands or?
Roll call, please.
Okay, I'll just do them in the order of my screen. Rick,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Rhonda,
Yes.
and does Erwin vote if he wasn't here or?
I'd have to abstain
Okay. Uh,
since I wasn't there.
Um, Avery,
Yes.
Denise,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Cecilia? She's muted, but it seems like a yes. Okay, I think we have everybody in favor. So you guys heard through Katie's email that unfortunately the Mass Housing Partnership couldn't join us tonight. I don't know if that was weather related or what, and I'm sure we're working to reschedule them. I read through their the packet and it looks very interesting, and there were many things that I needed a human to explain to me. So I personally would definitely like to see them come back and explain all of that. So unfortunately, we can't do that tonight, but we did still want to briefly discuss the work plan, what we want to do in the next few months and going forward, and try to establish a regular plan and sort of some specific things for February, March. So I'm going to kind of work backwards, and I know Joe Barnes is on the Zoom listening, but the CPC has requested prior to their meeting on March 13th that we write a report summarizing our work to date. And so that's something that we're working towards. And if you guys remember in the last meeting, we had talked about having the starting to actually look at the NHA's expenditure of the funds that have already been allocated to them, the 1.7 that already was approved by the CPC. And so what we'd like to do in a February meeting is to get a report from town staff on the status of the appropriations to the NHA. Have us as a committee review those reimbursement requests received, and then vote whether to approve the payment. And then have the NHA here with us to answer any questions that we may have. And so we would be starting the formal oversight process, with the money that's already been allocated. So I don't know if there's any discussion on that. If what thoughts people on the committee have about that plan?
So I think just to kind of unpack that a little further is that what we would anticipate is a report would kind of track that's what Kathy has laid out, but basically the charge that we have in terms of what our oversight responsibilities are. With the report, the anticipated recipient of the report being really directed to the select board, with copies being submitted to the other boards, the finance committee and the community housing committee. So just think of that as kind of the report that's going to be done to kind of as the capstone of our work for this period, which is relatively short, ending at March 13th.
Rick? Or I think you're muted.
You hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Mhm.
Okay, sorry about that. The only other question I had is a lot of that information was requested as part of our information request. And we should be by now having something back on those questions. And I don't know the status of that. Can we look into that and find out where our information requests stand?
Well, my sense, and maybe somebody else jump in if I've misunderstood this, my sense was that we were contributing to the questions that the CPC was asking of their due diligence. So I'm guessing that the answers would go back to them on whatever time frame that they're on, and maybe somebody else can comment on that. But that was my understanding of what we were doing. We were just sort of throwing in our 2 cents of what other due diligence questions the CPC might ask.
So Rick, the how presentation to CPC on the 20th, so a week from Wednesday. And what I had intended on doing as the representative of CPC on this committee, I would be attending the Housing Authority presentation and then doing a readout to this committee in the following meeting. I would anticipate that those questions would be answered by the time that the Housing Authority made its presentation on the 20th. I think I've got the right date. I don't have the calendar in front of me. I'm guessing a little bit. Yeah, it's I have it scribbled down as 1:20. So I think, and then so that information will be just part of the packet for the CPC for that evening, I would anticipate, but I'll follow up. I could make that part of my responsibility because I'm the representative from CPC on this committee.
And
Does that
just
make
to
sense?
clarify, Peter, it's January 24th, next Wednesday.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Have the right. Sorry. Thank you.
Just a follow up on that.
Mhm.
Some of the
Go ahead.
questions that we asked directly involve Kathy, what you were just talking about. I think one of the questions is how much have you asked the town for reimbursement on your initial application? Has that money been spent? What's the plans going forward for it? So I would think that the answers to those questions are important as we look to plan ahead. So.
Yes, and I think that what we will get in our next meeting, and I definitely want to talk about dates as a next thing, because dates are always one of the most difficult things, but what we would get directly is the full detail on all that
Okay, great.
from
Thank you.
town staff, and that we would be going through, each reimbursement request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on kind of the substance of the work? And so just sort of to lay out what the meetings would be. And again, before we get to dates, an early February meeting to do that oversight, to go through the reimbursement requests, to ask questions if we have them of NHA, to approve those reimbursement requests. Then a meeting in early March, where in between those two meetings, Katie has graciously offered to write up a report, and that we would be able to discuss it, make any needed edits, and then approve it at that meeting on March 4th. And that would give time to get the report to the select board for distribution, as Peter was saying, to the other boards, including CPC, prior to March 13th. So that would be the timeline of those two meetings. And so we were looking at what Katie and I spent some time looking at the calendar to try to find dates that would be amenable to everyone, and it is not easy. So we're looking at Mondays, and with Monday holidays and various other things, we're looking at Monday, February 5th and Monday, March 4th. And then thereafter, maybe doing second Mondays, but in the months of February and March, it's kind of tricky. And we were looking at February 5th and March 4th.
So
Yeah.
Kathy, if I could just weigh in on this, Denise, on February 5th, I am giving a representative's report to the community.
Oh my
And
gosh,
we've
that's right.
publicized this, and there's a costly mailing that's out about that, but I could work around the time. So the report would be from 7 to 8:30. I would have to be there at 6:45. If we had our meeting earlier, I would make that possible.
So do I have it wrong that your Needham meeting is February 12th? Is that a different?
I have a representative report in Needham, in Dover, and in Medfield.
Oh, so it's one of the other towns. Okay.
Right.
So if February 5th, it would have to be, say again, what time? It would have to be early.
Yeah, if it could be earlier, that I would make that possible.
Like 5, or what would be early
5 would
enough?
be great. 5 would be great.
Okay. Um, Any other, Erwin?
Yes, typically the PVBC meets the first and third Monday
Okay,
of the month, but to follow up on what Denise said, if the meeting were to start early, I would probably be able to attend because we would typically start our meeting around 7:30.
Okay.
But
Is
it's first and third
doable?
Mondays is usually our
Yeah.
meeting dates.
I think going forward, we would be aiming for second Mondays, not first Mondays. I have a conflict on first Mondays, but this was the only thing possible seemingly these couple months. But yeah, if we aimed for second Mondays on an ongoing basis, how would that work for people? Yeah, and I think it works for John Connolly as well. Tuesdays are not working for him, so that's one reason we really want FinCom representation on the committee, so it's one reason for looking at Mondays. And I know Thursdays does not work for Rhonda, if I'm right, and then Wednesday is FinCom, so yeah, so okay, so if we can do February 5th at 5, then I guess is what we'll aim for, and then March 4th, I guess we can nail down the time on that later, and then second Mondays thereafter. And, we'll just have ongoing communication and information sharing, in particular between TCHOC and CPC, but really starting our focus on oversight of the monies that were already approved by CPC and are being spent currently. Katie?
Just to gauge, I'm going to talk with Laura and Karsten from Mass Housing Partnership to reschedule that. Because there's a time crunch on that February 5th date. I just want to get a sense, would folks, if they can do the February 5th, do you want me to try to get it all in on that one meeting, or are folks comfortable if MHP joins us in the March meeting instead? Just to
March,
gauge
or even April, you know what I mean? Because like after this March meeting, I'm not sure that we're going to have some huge agenda item for April. I don't know. So it just seems that sometimes I would hate to have them come and then either truncate them or truncate some other discussion. That looks like having them, my sense is that could be a great standalone. There's a lot there.
Okay, I just want to
And
make sure folks
what
didn't.
other people think, but it, I really want to try to understand and make the most of their having the access to them.
Thanks.
So possibly April, and then we can really focus on this on the next couple of meetings. Give it give it what it needs. Any other thoughts, comments on this? Yeah, Rick.
Kathy, just a question, what time is the CPC meeting on that Wednesday? I'm assuming you can.
No,
attend via Zoom.
on the
7
13th.
PM.
I'm sorry.
7 PM.
7, thank you.
And yes, it'll be on Zoom as well.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, am I missing anything, Katie or Peter?
I have a question.
Or if we have a question.
Wanda.
So we're going to evaluate the pre-development funds that they've already expended, or they've said they've already expended, and whether or not to approve the bill. Do we know the update on whether or not they've signed the Housing Authority has signed a contract with Cambridge Housing? And does that contract, I mean, I assume the contract somehow outlines how and what they can spend money on? I guess I'm trying to figure out how we're going to judge whether or not it's a good expenditure. What are we basing it on? How are we going to evaluate whether or not what's being spent right? If they're paying them, I mean, I assume Cambridge Housing Authority is paying, you know, I don't know what they're paying or and how they're paying themselves or anyone else. And without a understanding of what's been agreed to, I'm not sure how we're going to evaluate whether they're good expenditures.
Well, I think I'll just throw this out there and other people can contradict me if I have this wrong, but some of that money has already been spent prior to that agreement, right? And so I'm not sure that it relates directly to the agreement, but also CPC approved that money for a specific purpose, did it not? And we can look to whether that money is being spent according to that purpose. Dave, you want to help me out here?
Sure. Just as you were saying, it's appropriate based upon is the expenditure consistent with what the appropriation is for. So generally, I would anticipate there's not going to be any issues with the bills because if it's for architectural services for pre-development, well, that's what we're looking for in terms of the invoices. The housing authority had to make the judgment of whether or not they received the proper services from the entity. But if they felt that they received the services that were expected and the services are consistent with the appropriation, we would approve that. If we received an invoice that was paying for development of a community garden or some other thing that's not related to the appropriation, that's when we would be saying, no, that's not appropriate.
So we're not looking at deliverables. We're just assuming if the housing authority says they've received the services and the deliverables. I'm trying to understand what exactly our value add is on this work.
Katie, did you want to answer?
I was just going to add to what Dave said that, you know, in advance of the next meeting, we can make sure that we get the full committee, the warrant article language and the details from CPC on, I think there's 4 pending, 4 prior appropriations, just so everyone has the same foundation.
Thank you. Avery, you had a question?
Yeah, I just was wondering what, in terms of the audience for this, I mean, what is sort of the main entity that this report would be geared toward, or is it sort of just a general public document, like more of sort of an open letter, open report?
Well, it's to the select board.
Okay.
The, CPC and other committees, finance committee, et cetera, town meeting will find it of interest, but of course, anybody can have access to it. I mean, I think, going back to the main point is we're acting as a fiduciary for town money.
Right, I wasn't sure it was like select board, town meeting, or if it was sort of another entity sort of embedded within that. Okay, thank you.
All of those, but it's, it's to the select board since we were appointed by the select board.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Erwin?
Yeah, sort of a follow-up to what Rhonda has asked. Going forward, is there going to be a point person at NHA that will be sort of acting as a project manager that will, in effect, be able to report to us whether the services asked for by the NHA of CHA have been met?
And I think we will have someone from the NHA. I don't know, Katie, if you know who, is it going to be Reg? Is it going to be someone else? Or do you have a sense of that?
So our 2 main points of contact have been Reg Foster, the chair of the board, and Cheryl Gosman, the executive director. So Reg had reached out in advance of this meeting to see if we wanted NHA representation. I let him know that no, based on our agenda, but this is now giving me guidance to follow up with him and Cheryl, and they can decide each month who they bring.
And Rick?
My question is along the similar lines, but in the information request we sent in addition for asking for the payments and what's been paid for and what tasks were accomplished, we also wanted to know whether or how they've spent the additional money that they were receiving vis-a-vis the grant, the ARPA grant money, where that was being spent. Was that being spent first, or was the town's money being spent first? The second aspect of it is what is the percentage of completion of the project? Just to get the number can lead us to a false sense of security. Because if they've expended, just as an example, 80% of the funds at some point, or committed 80% of the funds, and they've only achieved 50% of their objective, where is the additional money coming from? So I think that additional information is important as we look to evaluate the whole project and the oversight of the project from the town's perspective. Was I clear on that? I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Chair, Denise again, I've been very thoughtful about the role of this committee and the terms that we're looking for. Rick, as you can imagine, nobody is more interested in the expenditure of the ARPA funds than I am, but that is not the role of this committee. We are the oversight committee for the town funds, right? And it is our duty to report to the selectmen whether the town funds, it is our charge if the town funds have been expended in the way that it has been designed. So I think this is just over and over again, we're going to have to remind ourselves to stay in our lane. We want to understand the big picture, but we're not responsible for the entire big picture. We are responsible for the town funds and how the Needham Housing Authority is using the town funds.
Okay, well, I understand what you're saying, Denise, and I believe I might have to disagree a little bit, because I believe we are still in our lane by asking that question. Because if for whatever reason the town funds are used and we're not getting the value that we were supposed to be getting, then they have to get funds from other sources to complete the project, one of which is the ARPA funding. And I'm not necessarily looking to ask that we oversee that. All I'm suggesting is that we need that as part of the big picture of the pie that we have, because when the CPC approved the funds, there was an understanding that a portion of that money was going to be coming from the ARPA grant. Now, if they've decided to change that philosophy and they're behind schedule, I just think it's a piece of information we should have. I'm not suggesting that we oversee that. You know?
So you're very right, Rick, that is valuable information that needs to be had. It needs to be had by the CPC, right? We are responsible for the town funds. We have the oversight for the town funds. And that's why, we're using terminology that we want to clarify. I think one of the questions was, how do we judge if it's a good expenditure? We're not deciding if it's a good expenditure or not. We're deciding, is the expenditure consistent with, is the information we have about reimbursement consistent with the way we were told the money was going to be spent, right? So I just think we want to be thoughtful about the words that we're using. We want to be clear in our purpose. And I think you're right. I'm very pleased that Pete is going to the CPC meeting. I think there is a comprehensive picture to be had. It is to be had by the CPC.
Okay. Can I add, to just try to square that circle, which is we're going to ask representatives of the Housing Authority to be here, either Cheryl or Reg, but venture to say we may want to ask their consultant to be here at times as well. It's just something to think about. And I think that we can ask, in terms of approving these, when we're going through these expenditure requests, their representatives of NHA are going to be there and available for Q&A. And so we could ask, seems to me that we could ask generalized questions about the project itself and progress itself that may satisfy you, Rick. I think that was the intent, was to bring them in so that we could ask those generalized questions. But
Yes, they will be coming in, so we can try to understand how these things fit into the bigger picture. But as Denise was saying, our charge is to provide oversight over the town funds. And at this point, with the the funds that have already been allocated. It was, as Dave was saying, we are comparing it versus the purpose that they were allocated for by town meeting. So,
Once the information requests are published, a lot of these questions were asked along with the information request. And I'm just trying to establish a sense of comfort in the whole process. And, you know, and maybe I view the role here on the committee a little bit differently than some others, but I view our role as to make sure that the town's money is being spent appropriately and not just perform an accounting function and saying, yeah, they requested this money. Yeah, it was part of the original scope, therefore it's good. They don't need us. The town doesn't need us to do that. The town can do that with staff. My view of this was that we were being asked to look at this and provide guidance to the boards, the select board, the community preservation committee, based on our knowledge. I mean, we've got representatives.
well, we don't want to replace the work of the CPC. It's the CPC that will decide how to spend CPA money, and we don't have the authority to do that. In fact, CPC has the authority to do that, not us. But there was a gap in terms of the fact that this is town money being spent on a project that the town does not control, you know, and we're there to fill that gap.
Okay.
I think as we go along, you know, we haven't done it yet. So I'm hopeful that as we start doing this and we go along with it, we will start to feel more comfortable with it. But, you know, we do, you know, have money that's out there that we're going to be providing oversight on.
But it's all CPA money, right? Is there any money that isn't coming from the CPA that we're overseeing?
Not at this point, no.
So I'm sort of in where Rick is. I'm still, so they're looking at whether or not it's being expended correctly. And we're saying that we're doing the same thing.
No, they're looking at whether they should recommend to town meeting to appropriate more.
Okay.
In this May
They're
town
not
meeting.
watching to see if the money that they gave them is being spent well.
That's what we are going to do.
That's what we're doing. Okay.
And Rhonda, yeah,
I'm just
think,
trying to get it.
yeah, no, I just think that let's think about the words we're using. We're not making value judgments, right? Where it's not whether it's being spent well, though I trust it's being spent well. It's whether it's being spent appropriately, consistent with the way the money was discharged to them by the CPC.
So
You know,
I guess as a town meeting member, I'd want to know more than that personally. I guess as a town meeting member, I'd not want to just know if it was being spent appropriately. I'd want, if we're going to be doing this, I'd want to be know that it was being spent in a way that was furthering the project in an efficient way, not just whether or not it was hitting the right bucket. So that's just my 2 cents is that if we're going to do this, it seems to me that we shouldn't be just saying, yes, we said it was for affordable housing. I'm just making it up. We said it was for affordable housing, and yes, it's being done for affordable housing, or it's being done, used for this, that, and that. We should be saying this is being really well organized. They're doing a great job of managing the project. They're being very efficient. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know, I think there's more we could do to make people feel really great about what's going on if the money's being spent well. That's all.
So, and I think that is something that, as a town meeting member, I think you will want more information. You'll have more money, more information. I just don't think it's the role of this committee. And I guess, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, and I have tried to be, I've thought about the charge of this committee a lot. So remember how we keep saying this is a multi-layer cake? right? So there's ARPA money in this, state money, through ARPA that is involved in this project that we already have, that the Needham Housing Authority already has, that I worked very hard to make sure we would have, right? Then there's the CPC money. And then we all know, and Rhonda, you know better than I do actually, about then how we build it with more state money and where those other streams of revenue come. And then God willing, there's going to be federal money, right? So in this case, right, the town is responsible for the eggs. And we have to make sure that we said, we want you to buy eggs, and everybody bought eggs for the cake. And the way that we spent that money for the eggs was appropriate, and we did that part. That's the lane in which we're operating right now here. But each and every one of us, I'm hoping each and every one of us becomes an ambassador for the project, and we know more. I want to ask Katie that in fact, whether it's Reg or whether it's Cheryl Gossman who comes to our meetings, that they do in fact come with their counsel. And I don't mean to eat into the money, but you know, I think that's what we want to have to build this sense moving forward. I just want us to be clear on what we're doing. And I think Dave gave us the very best explanation. I mean, I'm kind of simple with the eggs, but Dave said, we actually spend this money and you gave us a reimbursement that is consistent with that expenditure. Yes, for the town money, this was consistent with the town's desires. And the CPC charge is much bigger. And for every one of us, particularly committed to deeply affordable housing in the town, there's more work for us all to do. It's just the piece of work we do here when we're gathered is very, very clear.
Can I?
Let me just say,
So
let me just say something, Peter, before you go. I think another way to think about this is that since the Needham Housing Authority is not a town body, right? It is a quasi-state body. We as a town do not have oversight over the Needham Housing Authority. We do not as a town have oversight over this entire project. And that would probably be a lot more satisfying. You know, and I think a lot of people would feel more comfort with that. But legally, that's just not where we are. You know, we don't control them. They're not under us as a town. And so that's why we are only looking at the town money that's going, that's what we control. We don't control the NHA. We don't control the whole project.
So Kathy,
No?
if I could just respond. We've allocated roughly 1.4 million of the town's funds towards this project. That money is at risk. If this project doesn't get built, there's no language that says that the housing authority has to pay us back. If they can't get the financing, there's nothing that says that they have to pay us back. The town loses its money because we funded this up front. And all I'm suggesting is that as a committee, we have a role to evaluate the risk associated with the money that we spend. It's not just, did they spend the money and here's the receipts. It's, have they spent the money? Have they spent it wisely? Has the project continued along the same schedule and at the same time frame that original $1.4 million said it was going to achieve? And if it hasn't, then the town's money is at risk. And where do we get additional funds to be, as Denise says, the ambassador? I have no problem with that. I just want to, I think our role is to protect the town's interest, both from a monetary perspective and from a risk perspective on this project. We're like a bank.
I'm not sure that we are going to make a recommendation to the CPC. That sounds like a recommendation to move forward with funding or not in the future. And I don't see us making that kind of recommendation, because that is really for CPC to decide
Yeah, I don't disagree.
with the CPA money.
I don't disagree at all. But, you know, I mean, I would think that we'd want to rely on the PVC's expertise. That's why Erwin's here, to comment on whether they are in fact on schedule and within budget, just like we do on regular town projects. When this PBBC reviews the construction of this school administration building, they're looking at the cost expenditures and they're approving those cost expenditures for that project. And is the project on time? And if it isn't, then how is that going to impact the total cost of the ongoing project? And is the money at risk? And that's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, the only tricky difference there is that the PPPC is working on a project that the town is controlling.
Mhm.
So that is the tricky difference here, you know?
And aren't they letting us in because they want money from the town? And they're asking, I mean, I agree with the what Rick said about the analogy of a bank. You know, either we're here to say, this is a great, and also to be able to advocate. I mean, it's very hard to stand up and go like, you know what, this is an amazing project. We all should get behind it, because I know that when they gave us $1.5 million, when we gave them $1.4 million, they allocated it to the right buckets. That is not a great sentence, right? Whereas if you can turn around and say, this project is going incredibly well. You know, they've got an incredible contract in place. They've got an incredible, you know, consultant in place. The money is being allocated. You know, going back to Nisa's eggs analogy, not only they're not only buying the right eggs, they're buying the right number of eggs, and they're you know, they're the right quality of egg. I mean, I just think that there is a lot. If we're supposed to be advocates and we're supposed to be overseeing, helping the select board know that the money is being spent well, we need to do more than just say that it's the money is being allocated properly. And if that's not what we want to do, that's fine. I'm just saying that to me, to be able to stand up and advocate for this, to my friends that are on town meeting, I would need more information than that. That's all. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing. I'm just saying that I would personally need more information to be an advocate of how it's getting done. I'm clearly an advocate of the project. I mean,
but our charge isn't actually to advocate. So, you know, I think that
that's fine.
having us here is a way to provide integrity so that we have oversight and we know what is going on with the town money, right? If there were no oversight of past town expenditures, it would be crazy to have more, right? And so we need this process of oversight of the town money. But again, we don't control the whole project. I think that it is counterintuitive and makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable about the whole thing. It would feel better to be in charge of the whole thing, but we're not. And in fact, the town money is going to be a very small part of the, you know, whole puzzle, as you all know, right? It's going to be a lot more state and federal money. We do want to make sure the town money is being spent in a way that is going to get us what we want, right? Which is new and expanded Linden Chambers.
So,
Can I just add something?
Sure.
So there is a part of I'm turning to the charge, because the charge does have the committee meet regularly to review the progress of the community housing projects in which the town has made an investment. And the way I had thought about that mechanically was pretty simple, which was we're going to be the auditors. We're going to get these requests for reimbursements in, and we're going to approve them, and in order that they conform with the grant provisions and the warrant article. But we want a live body there for questions that we may have. And I thought that in the context of that, you know, necessarily we're going to hear about the progress of the project.
Yeah.
It may be in generalized terms, and it may lead to, but the generalized questions may lead to some additional questions on our part. But I do think that I think in a general way, we do want to make sure that the building gets built, or at least that we get to that next step. So I think that we need to have them present, and I think that they're available to ask questions of them at that time. I think we're feeling our way through this charge, but I would hope that in our ultimate the deliverable that we give to the select board, the memo, is going to include words like we had housing authority and its representatives in on these dates in connection with requests for reimbursements, and they provided us with an update on the project status generally. I mean, I think that satisfies our charge. We may find that we want to dig in a little deeper, but I think that that's consistent with the charge. That's the way I had viewed it. And again, maybe that's my way of threading the needle or squaring the circle, but addressing the concerns that both Rhonda and Rick have, but with our, with the idea that we should stay within our lane or some word like that, or not overstep it, understanding that it's not really our project; it's a separate government entity that has the project.
Yeah, and so just
I was just going to say, Chair, that I think one of the things that's true is that all of us wear a lot of hats, particularly in relationship to this project, right? And I think all those hats are needed, and I think all those hats are necessary. We just have to remember what hat we're wearing in what meeting, right? So the CPC is going to make a decision about that money that has been requested. Their decision then goes to the select board. We are advisory to the select board when we can say, yes, the Needham Housing Authority has been a good steward of the money to this state. If you're making a decision on how to move forward, we believe you can move forward with trust in the process, because we've seen there has been no misappropriation of any funds that we have witnessed. Then it goes to town meeting, and then we all switch hats again, right? And when we get to town meeting, CPC is going to make a presentation, the select board's going to make a presentation, FinCom's going to make a presentation, and members of town meeting, and we've got a lot of stakeholders in town now who care deeply about this project for a whole variety of reasons. Those are town meeting members. They will get up and they will make their case as well, right? At the time that it comes to town meeting, we don't make a presentation. With our advice, the select board makes their presentation. And that's why I'm just saying, and I'm really, there's not a one of us that has extra time. I'm looking at this board here that has extra time. We're all here because we care about this project. I just want us to wear the hat we're supposed to be wearing in the meeting that we're in. And I believe we're all going to be sitting in a lot of different meetings about this project, trying to make it all.
further thoughts? I think part of what I've heard is that we need context in order to look at these reimbursements from Rick and Rhonda, the context of the broader project and how this money fits in. And I mean, I think that makes sense. And I think, as Peter was saying, we can get that in the Q&A, with the NHA when they come in, that kind of context that you need. And then we will, as I understand it from Peter, we will have the responses to the due diligence questions that are going to the CPC. That'll be in the packet.
I'll confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay, but the usual drill is that all those due diligence questions are answered by the time of the presentation, but I'll confirm that and I'll let Katie know. We can distribute that to the committee members, that information.
Okay, so I think we will have the opportunity to get that kind of context and get the questions answered. And as Peter was saying, to get an update on the status of the project, All right, so I guess we'll aim for February 5th at 5 for our next meeting, and then March 4th after that, time to be determined. Any other thoughts or questions?
Question on the 4th, maybe I missed it. You might have talked about it earlier, but we had the presentation scheduled for today. Are we going to be doing that, and at which meeting? And are we going to have, or is that going to be a separate meeting?
So I think my personal thought on that is that should be a separate meeting. On the 4th, we would, Katie will create a draft report from us to the select board. And on the 4th, we'll want to discuss that. I guess I'm hesitant to double book that also with the presentation, you know, because I'd like to give the presentation plenty of time. So I was
When do you
thinking,
think the presentation will take place, Kathy?
I don't know,
Housing
ideally
authority.
right after that, maybe the next meeting after that, you know, not too far in the process. You know, it's
When is the
obviously too
housing
bad.
authority
Tonight would have been
presentation?
perfect. But it, you know, couldn't happen due to the weather.
Yeah, I meant the housing authority presentation. You said they were coming.
Oh, no, the housing authority will come in on the 5th, February
Okay.
5th. They'll be in on our next meeting.
All right, I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
understand. Okay.
They're not a presentation really, right? I mean, Dave or someone else are gonna provide a report on the status of the appropriations. We're gonna review them. The NHA will be there to answer all of our questions about what they've spent. So we'll be doing the oversight, but they will be there. Okay. Other thoughts, questions? If not, maybe I'd welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in, oh, we have to do the roll call again. Okay, Rick? I couldn't hear you, but
Sorry, yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Avery,
Yes, thank you.
Denise,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Rhonda, Erwin,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Cecilia.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? We are adjourned. We'll see each other for our oversight with the NHA on February 5th at 5. Okay, thank you all.
Folks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.